What's going on, Soul Tribe? And welcome to Alchemist Astrology. Justin here, and are you ready to get into them lunar shenanigans? Which is a weekly show that goes over the astrology of the moon, whose domicile it's in, what phase it's in, when it happens to go void of course, and to get an understanding of the different configurations and applications and separations of the moon with the other planets. So it's good to think of that good old moon. And this one we have a bit of a trickier week, kind of starting off with the moon, as typical sometimes with this moon, because the moon's going to finish up its time with Cancer, in its domicile of Cancer. It's got that pressure from Saturn that's kind of bringing a bit of that heaviness, that sluggishness that's kind of starting off there. Got a little bit of the support from the benefics, but we're going to kind of break down some of these configurations. I was reading some text in there, some things that I want to mention in that. The time when the moon enters into the domicile of the sun, when it gets into Leo, is going to be a bit trickier, because that's when the moon's going to be in aversion to the benefics, and it's going to have this hard configuration with Mars. That's not going to be so great during that period of time while the moon's there. There's a bit of a harmonious one there with Mercury. With Mercury, something to maybe do some kind of quick thinking, while we're dealing with this stuff. That's going to be the harder portion of this week. Then when the moon moves into the domicile of Mercury, when it gets into Virgo, that's when it gets back under the view of the benefics. So that's going to bring a bit more of relief, and then we end up with the moon in the domicile of Venus in Libra at the end of the week, and kind of applying to the sun, which we'll talk about that application towards the end there. So just to give you kind of give you a feel of the week. Now, before we jump into this thing, if you want to support the work that I'm doing further, a couple ways. Down in the description box, there's a link to book a consultation with me. It's about to be Gemini season here soon for all you with your sun in Gemini. It's be a good time to get eyes on the year ahead there. And so that my links to book a consultation with me, my email's down there if you have any questions. And then I also have a link for my Patreon page, which I have a couple of tiers. One will give you access to a monthly show that I do for the most auspicious dates for each month, and then the other will give you access to a monthly transit report for me. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely go check that out. But let me go ahead and switch over to the screen where I got the chart up here if you're watching the video version on YouTube here. I'm going to be covering the week of May 19th through the 25th, 2026 here. And when we're starting off, if you're looking at the chart, I have the exact aspect of the moon and Saturn in a square configuration here, in a tetragonal configuration. This is a harder aspect that's coming on. The moon is in its own domicile, which is nice. When we're just kind of breaking this down, that means the moon is able to do all of those lunar things best. It's able to take care of its business. It's in its own home space, and it's able to even to take care of the lovely guests that it has, having both of the benefics here. Which, that was something that I wanted to kind of start off with right off the bat there, that idea. You would think that combination of the moon, Venus, and Jupiter all together in a sign would be very positive, and it does have some very positive indicators, but it's not all positive, and that's something that I'm going to kind of talk about here in a second. But even when you just look at that just kind of in a, just kind of knowing what the planets signify, even though we have this really nice pocket here in the sign of Cancer, in the Cancer portion of our charts, Saturn is overcoming all of that. And so it's like you're in your own place, but someone's just like keeps throwing paint and eggs and trying to TP your house. That's Saturn. That's Saturn out there harassing and all of those things. And because when you look at Saturn's position, and this is why when you think about, when people were talking about like, oh, when Jupiter's in Cancer, this is going to be this whole great thing. Jupiter's been under a lot of pressure, especially now that Saturn settled into Aries now and has been in this superior aspect to them. The squares are considered harder aspects, and so that's going to diminish the amount of beneficence and support that Jupiter and now that Venus can provide there, and even the Moon. It's like you're trying to take care of these guests while your house is under repair, and you got a whole bunch of things going on. So that's kind of the feel that the Moon has been going through over these couple of days. Now, one thing I wanted to kind of talk about here with the kind of going into the week, because before I get into the kind of breakdown of the delineation here, I've been really digging the talking about the applications and separations of the moon, because those are very different from just the general configurations of like the squares, the trines, oppositions, sextiles, co-presences, things like that. This is when the moon is separated from one planet and applying to another, and all of those have various meanings. And when we ended the last week, the moon was separating from Mars and now is applying to this Saturn here as we start off the week. And so you can already get a feel that there's going to be maybe some sluggishness, some slowish that's going to be coming from Saturn. Just thinking about how Mars is about action and force and drive, and then Saturn's the reverse of that, taking your time, going slowly. And so I'm reading from Firmicus Maternus's book, The Methesis, and talking about that flowing from the moon from Mars to Saturn. And he says, if the moon flowing away from Mars would be born to Saturn while full or waxing in light, and that's what the moon's doing right now, it's in the waxing phase. It makes slow, idle people and those who are able to make headway in no actions and who obtain nothing in those things they desire. So this would be one where if you're noticing that you maybe kind of starting off this week that it's been hitting maybe these walls, these boundaries, that there's been no motivation. The moon was that significator of the body, and so that there could be that chilling effect of Saturn, that thing, that demotivation, that maybe not wanting to move due to anxiety or some sort of thing, or maybe there's other things that are kind of going on there. This could be a time to kind of show oneself some grace as you're trying to kind of start this, as we're starting this week off there. Kind of take it slow, take it easy, take care of the body as one can, especially again with the benefics being present with that moon, taking the resources that you have, and just tending to oneself as you can. You're thinking about the malefics too were indicative of like diseases and illnesses, sort of things like that, different attacks on the body. Even Saturn dealing with more sort of like secretive things, and sometimes that can be where I'm thinking about how sometimes if something's off with the body, but we just try to ignore it, try to put it off, maybe it'll just go away, the body kind of fix itself. Saturn can deal with those kind of secretive things, the things that we may not want to deal with, and that could be something where it's that those things that we may have been pushed in the back of our mind, this is just a general example, could be brought to the forefront. Maybe there's some sort of things that you can't ignore in these things that we have to deal with. I remember talking with someone who not too long ago, who this place that I kind of regular at, and he was cooking, and we were talking, and he was telling me how he'd been feeling this pain and things, and had been taking some Advils and stuff like that, and where that's kind of helped him get through its day, that's not doing any sort of long-term things. And so where Saturn may have, or where the moon may have been started applying to Saturn, is going to separate from that, and it's going to apply to Big Papa, Jupiter. And so there can be where if we get maybe some eyes on this thing, and I'm just talking about a very general thing, you have to apply this to your life, but this could be that dealing with that secret, kind of facing that thing that we've been not wanting to deal with, and just getting that where we're able to take steps and start to take some actions towards that. So that's just one thing to think about with that. Now, another thing that I wanted to bring in, just thinking about the combination of that moon, Venus, Jupiter, and how you would normally think that is a very, very positive thing, and again, that is, but reading in, and this is something I may start doing with different combinations as the moon is co-present with the other planets. But I wanted to read a passage here from Vedi's Valence text, the anthology, and this talk about, he has this section on combinations of stars, and this talks about Jupiter, Venus, and the moon. So this causes vigorous, famous men, high priests, prize winners, overseers of temples and shrines, benefactors, men of eager fame, catering to the pleasures of the masses, of cities or villages. These men receive trust and are thought of worthy of honor. They're well spoken of and envied by family and friends, and so all of that sounds great so far. But here we get into the but. But experience, they, with all of that, they experience hostility and opposition. And so you would think that that's a little strange for something that would normally be so positive, you would think, with that. But it gets me thinking, when it's a very common thing. There are times where, just thinking in life, where someone's having just things are just going great for them. Let's say maybe they've got a promotion, just got married, maybe got a kid, just all these good things are happening. Whereas vice versa, you have someone, let's say, that's been maybe just lost their job, maybe just got a divorce, maybe just had whatever that happened to be. You have these sort of extremes in life, and where you necessarily don't want ill for the person who's doing well, that can create that sort of almost jealousy or that sort of envy of just like, man, why can't my luck go that way? Why do they seem to get everything? It create this weird sort of, this almost covetedness that can happen sometimes. So that would be even something that I would kind of tune into, that Saturn can maybe make one feel so oppressed and maybe bring one's limitations to the forefront, and maybe noticing how other people may not be struggling as much, and then it kind of can push one in a deeper sort of hole. That Saturnian depression can come in there, and that can create maybe even that separations from things. So that's something I think to pay attention to. But I also think about like how much one can give of oneself. I think with that combination, Venus, Moon, Jupiter just wants to nurture the hell out of people, wants to give all the love, wants to just give, and paying attention how that can create those sort of habitual relationships where people come to maybe expect. And when you're like, and pay attention to that shifts in your relationship, where there are times where it's like, hey, I've just given a lot of myself, I need to take some time for me. And then if you notice where it's just like, oh, well, what now you're being selfish, what you already have so much, what do you mean? So there could even be some of those sort of things. You don't have to be necessarily uber rich or anything for that to happen. This could just be in just a very general sort of thing. So that would even be something that I could see potentially kind of coming up there, where Saturn is impeding on that, really taking like, even in good fortune, it's still creating these tensions there. So that's just some things I think to just kind of navigate while the moon is in Cancer. It's a pretty complex combination, and I think that it warrants that to pay that kind of attention to those things when we're breaking down these different configurations. That it's not just always just bad or good. There's usually a combinations of things, and things are way more complex and stuff that's going on there. So that's something to pay attention to, and even just to tune into with the moon traveling through, in its domicile, seeing if you have paying attention to what time lords that you have. Are they in one of the cardinal signs? That's going to be Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or Aries, because that moon and any other planets that are going through, they're going to be working more actively with that placement. So that could be another thing to tune into. And even this is something too I like to just one last thing before we move to the next one, when we're talking about these different configurations and these different aspects, paying attention if you have these configurations in your own chart, and seeing how that has shown up in your own life, and then that can even give you a better feel of how this may be translating on a more mundane sort of sense there. So just some various ways to just kind of look at your chart there. But I think that's all that I have for that period of time while the moon is in Cancer. Like I said, a lot to kind of work through on that one. Now, when we get to, and that's pretty much through from the 19th through the next like 31 hours that I had put that up there for. And then the moon will enter into Leo on the 20th at about 7:47 p.m. Pacific time. And when we think about this, just kind of first starting, let's kind of break this down. The moon is now in the domicile of the sun. And so you're thinking about how can the moon do things from a solar lens, from like when we think about the stuff of the sun is that idea of the will, the spirit, the higher mind. The sun is getting into places of rank, of authority, and having those friendships and being having rulership over the masses. Oh, and just by the way, if you're depending on where you're watching this is a now we're officially in Gemini season, and this is nice too because the moon is able to, while it's in the domicile of the sun is able to see the moon. So that's a real kind of positive indicator there for the moon. There's some reception that the moon's going to be in, and when it's going through the early degrees of Leo. For those little bit, at least it'll be going through the confines or the bounds. If you're watching the video here, the first two, or not 2 portions, but the first 2 confines belong to the benefic. So that's really nice that when the moon's first traveling in those early portions of Leo. So that's at least some positive stuff there. Now the negative things to talk about with this one is that the moon is now in aversion to the benefic. So if you're looking at the chart here, the moon is they're not configured to each other anymore by the main aspects. That's the sextile, trine, square, opposition, or co-presence. And it's just under the view of the malefics now. We're talking about with the moon here. Yes, it has this harmonious, this more easy configurations with the sun and Mercury, but it has this hard configuration with Mars, and then has an easier configuration with Saturn. So that kind of blends out there, but it's still malefic heavy when we're talking about this period of time with the moon in Leo. And this is one where the moon, because it's waxing in light, how we had mentioned in that earlier section, the moon is waxing in light. And so it was thought when the moon you can think about that as like the moon in its more diurnal phase because it's increasing in light. And Mars being contrary of sect to the diurnal sect, that makes those configurations to Mars were thought to be more challenging, more just harder to deal with. When I was thinking about this configuration, it gave me Mars can deal with things that are sudden and abrupt. I know Uranus gets that a lot in the modern context, but but Mars was the one that just kind of got the adrenaline pumping. It made me think of this example where I used to live in Colorado a few years ago, and in the middle of the night, we were sleeping, and all the alarms went off in the house, and it was one of those things where you couldn't think, you just had to act. It was just adrenaline and just like, oh, I hated it. It was awful. It was pretty much shook the whole day. You're just like on edge, and that stays in the body. That's something I think I think that's a good way of thinking about a harder aspect with Mars, especially this tetragonal one that's happening, because it's those things that can stay with you for a long time. The moon signifying the body can be those trauma, those things that you don't quite let go. Those you can still feel that adrenaline, or you can feel that fear, that part of you becomes present again, almost like you're reliving it. And so that's how I think a Mars square Saturn could feel like. But one thing that I think, if I'm going to bring in a positive with this, that harmonious configuration with Mercury being the planet that one signifies how we think and stuff along, amongst innumerable other things, it can help one that give that sort of quick thinking where you can navigate a situation on instinct, where it's just like, okay, there's an emergency, bam, let's do this, check all the stuff. Okay, where's the fire, where's this thing, is there stuff, how do I disconnect these things? And it's like it's like the mind and the instincts are one. And so there can even be a chance for some chance to, with that, I'm thinking with the moon being sextile with the sun, maybe to rise to the occasion, to be the one to face the sudden challenge that maybe Mars brings. Maybe there's some sort of confrontation that's coming on there. Maybe there's some sort, maybe a business is under some sort of lawsuit or things, and there's a coming for help, or there could have been some sort of loss on someone's part. Maybe someone's property got damaged or something, and then you could be like a coming to step in and just like, hey, do you need a hand? How is there help to provide? I remember when, like, for example, I had a friend whose house had caught on fire, and there was a lot of support from the community that came through with that. So that could be where there is this harsh things that are happening, but this can be where that, even just thinking about how Saturn can even come to contribute to the mix. This can help brings, this could be getting someone to help get things in order, whether this be a friend, it could be a community, something along those lines, some kind of foundational like a thing that I think that can help, just bring some sort of order to some stuff there. So it maybe help and I think even sometimes when we have stuff with Saturn, those easier aspects, it can help be at peace with things taking a little bit longer, that where we would want this stuff to be just kind of over and done with and be where things are fixed. It's just like it takes some time, but it's like with my friend that happened to, they got the support that they needed. They had to do some fixing up and some things around the house, but it even turned out better because then they were able to model the house the way that they wanted to. So there was even some kind of silver linings there. But this one is, again, I think this is a bit of a harsher one. I'd pay attention to when anger is present, because that's an easy time to get in a fight. The moon and Mars are dealt with like wanderings and things, so I'd just be mindful of just if you're having to commute during this period of time, moving really fast, traveling, whether it be by sea, by flying, by car, whatever that happens, by bike, walking, just making sure to pay attention to that. People may be moving fast, not paying attention. Things like that. Being, of course, speaking of fires, being careful with just like different people around fires, things around those lines. Taking care of the body. Mars, I always think about as like can be like attacks of like fevers and burns and stuff like that. So staying hydrated during this always, but especially during this period of time. Just thinking about the the moon being in the sun sign too. So that's basically the moon in Leo though. Yeah, that one's a little bit of a trickier one to deal with, but it gives, again, there's something about maybe being able to turn something negative into a positive, to be kind of to get some sort of ingenuity to kind of happen there, where maybe something was lost or taken away by Mars, something can be replaced to fill in that gap or something like that. So yeah, this is something to pay attention to while the moon is in Leo. So then we move, and that's pretty much, the moon's going to be in Leo from the 20th of May till about the 22nd, almost the end of the day, 22nd of May, because then the moon will move into Virgo at about 11:57 p.m. Pacific time. And then when we look at the lay of the land here, now the moon is in the domicile of Mercury, and Mercury's in good shape. When we're looking at the chart here, Mercury is in its own domicile, which is really nice. It's not configured to the benefics, which is meh, and it's got Saturn in view, but at least it's a softer aspect. But at least Mercury is able to do Mercury business. It's able to provide for the moon, and now it's able to see the moon too, with it being in its sign there. So there's that reception that's really nice from there. And so things take on the moon doing the stuff from Mercury's standpoint here. And so this could be, and we're then now, like I said, the moon is back in the view of the benefics, which is really nice. So this could be taking the challenges that had came up during when the moon was in Cancer, and even maybe when the moon was in Leo, if there were any sort of hardships, any sort of challenges. Now we can try to figure out how to fix some of those things, because now we have, again, the benefics are back in view. They're providing that, and they're in this superior position to the moon, where the sextile was sort of a weaker configuration configuration, then when the moon, let's say when the moon moves into Scorpio and we'll have that overcoming trine, or even when the moon's in Pisces and have that, or it's better when the moon would be better when the moon's in Scorpio. But this would be still really good too. It's just a little bit weaker, to provide aid. So again, this is like where maybe we can't get, let's say, going back to the house scenario, where it's like we can't maybe get you a new house. We can at least help you fix up your old place and try to improve that sort of thing. If that's happening, then maybe someone can give you a place to stay while you're getting those things fixed up. So that could be one way that this provides that can kind of come through, kind of show up there. And the moon's going to be, we're getting into the last quarter phase, because when we're looking at the lay of the land here, the moon's going to be like applying to the sun, applying to Mercury, applying to Mars, pretty much everyone but Saturn. This is a pretty busy time for the moon. But this would be one where I would even pay attention to whenever the moon and the sun are square to one another. That's like the mind, checking in with how the mind and the body are doing, because sometimes you can be so fixated on one thing and fixed to another that you can that stretches yourself kind of thin. It can get you where you're at odds with oneself and just a little unsettled. So that can be a time I think to just kind of check in with oneself, seeing how you're doing, how your energy levels are going, and things along those lines. Checking the mind, making sure there hasn't been just a lot of just mental anxiety and things along those lines. Taking some time with Venus, kind of nurture oneself. Jupiter being amongst, maybe finding some time to spend with some friends, with family, or even just in one's space, whatever that happens to look like, one's environment. But there is some relief that's come through there, and it gives that, even with that trine with Mars, it gives that feeling of being able to just move a bit better. And maybe it's something where, again, where there's been a lot that's been going on over the last few days, where one may still feel maybe a bit drained from that Mars trine is like, okay, I can, even though like I'm a little worn out, I can see the finish line. If I can just put a little extra oomph, a little more push, I can get through this thing. But again, acknowledge one's limits, and not to be to where you're putting the body in any sort of strain, any sort of danger, anything along those lines. But yeah, the moon in Virgo definitely gives a lighter feel over these next couple of days there, after we get past that last quarter that we're moving into. So this could see, and I think that this could even be where, if you've been, I think about Jupiter and Venus, that more spiritual aspect of both of them. If you're needing some sort of help, some sort of assistance, there could be looking to different charities and things along those lines. And I think even too, when we feel like we're in a place where we want to give more, where it's just like, gosh, I wish I could help in some sort of degree. Maybe you have been, like when I was going back to that like moon Jupiter Venus conjunction, where everything's feeling good and you're feeling that, to help spread that along could be doing those sort of like small things, just like volunteering, doing stuff for the community, maybe going around cleaning up around your neighborhood. It could be something, scheduling like a little neighborhood cleanup, or doing something where we're like a food drive or something along those lines, or whatever that happens to look like. I think that even though there's this weaker aspects that are, or configurations that are happening, you can still get a lot of good that can come from those two. And Venus and Jupiter together, that is ultimately really, really nice, when we're kind of thinking about that. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to say about that. I think that's all that I want to mention with the moon in Virgo. And then the last little bit here, and this is what we're going to kind of end on. We're going to talk about the moon entering into Libra. The moon's going to be in Virgo pretty much from the 22nd that I mentioned until the 25th. And the moon's going to enter into Libra at about 7:34 a.m. Pacific time. And we're not going to get into the whole breakdown of this. I'm going to talk about because the final aspect that the moon is going to complete, or the final aspect the moon's going to apply to on the 25th, which is this day here, is going to be to the sun. So I'm going to talk about that and what Firmicus says about that when the moon, since it's flowing, the last aspect that the moon did was from Jupiter, and so it's flowing away from Jupiter and it's applying to the sun. And this was an interesting one. The ones with the sun always fascinate me. But when we're talking about the moon flowing from Jupiter to the sun, if the moon flowing away from Jupiter would be born to the sun, it squanders the paternal and the paternal and maternal patrimony with various abuses, and alienates them from their parents or settles them on a long foreign journey, makes some exiles, others fugitives, imposes the slavery of disrespectful captivity on others, especially if the sun or moon were found in the house of Saturn or Mars. So thank goodness that that's not happening. Gotta love how those ancients talk about that. I personally get a kick out of it. But that does, when you think about that though, it does make sense. It's like the moon is going from that sort of loving embrace of Big Papa, Jupiter loves everyone, into the more sort of authoritative embrace of the sun. The sun is very much about itself, and granted the sun's about friendships and things, but these are my friends. These are things that are associated with me, and that are my things. Whereas the moon is about the people there. So the moon is going into, there could be, because when you even just look at the lay of the land, Venus, or the moon being in the domicile of Venus is in mixed shape. It doesn't have, it's a triplicity lord in Cancer, so that's nice depending on the day or night. It has some bounds, and actually when we're looking at this, when it's entering in, when the moon enters into Libra, Venus is actually going in its bounds right now. So, has some bounds in Cancer. But again, it's got this where it's co-present with Jupiter, which is a positive thing. We like that. It has more. It's got both of the malefics in configuration to it. So Saturn's again coming down, bearing down on Venus, which is diminishing some of that positivity that Venus has. Even Mars, to a lesser degree, even though it's a sextile, it's still bringing in some martial action in there. So again, Venus is a bit mixed, and the moon itself is configured with the benefics more so than the malefics, but it's still got this opposition from Saturn that we'll get into next week. So I don't want to bear too much in this, but it's like the moon is a lot of this feeling, and let me go ahead and switch over. A lot of the things that I've been noticing and trying to talk about these different configurations is like how you can, you'll see these, if you break down the stuff by themselves, you can just pick out the positive things. The moon is in the sign of a benefic, which is great. It's configured to the benefics, which is great, even though whether it be by a square or not, which we'll talk about that more next week. But it's configured to the benefics, which is great, but there's always, there's something that's going on there. It's very rare when it's just completely benefic or completely malefic. And so that's been an interesting thing to try to get a blend. But I think that it's where it can be tricky. I don't think it's so hard to grasp because life presents itself very much like that. You can be doing great in your career and great in all this stuff, but then have poor health. Or you can be doing amazing in health and then have living paycheck to paycheck. Or you can have a great house, have a great home, but then no friends. So it's like it really can be just life is such a mixed bag, and we're all allotted these different fortunes and things. And I think that following the moon like this just shows how almost indiscriminate the moon can be as far as distributing the fortunes. Some people get some good combinations. Some people are born with Venus, Jupiter conjunctions. Others have Mars, Saturn conjunctions, or they have oppositions or squares, and we're just all kind of navigating this together. But I think that this is one where I think learning how to see where that's coming up in your chart, how that's navigating in your space, and to I don't know. I think that it just provides a level of just of preparedness. It's like to be forewarned is to be forearmed. Because if you're in the that state of where Saturn will try to not necessarily keep you ignorant, but it'll show you where one is ignorant. And if we keep staying in that state of ignorance, then it's going to we'll keep living in necessity. I think about that's where Saturn is overcoming and winning all the time. It is suppressing all of that, and I think there's a lot of that in the mix, trying to see that hope with all of that pressure that comes on there. Because I think that a lot of the times, and I'm closing up my thoughts, I think a lot of the times too, last thought, that Saturn just gets thought of as just sluggish and slow. Saturn's violent. Saturn is oppressive. Saturn can be, and it's different from Mars. It's secretive. It's trickery. It's deceptive in a way that it can be depraved. This Mars, even with this, it's like that's when I'm gonna get ready to do the monthly ones here soon. Yeah, I'm gonna probably record that here next, and just even thinking about like Venus and Saturn in just a square with each other. That's something that just some depravity that can come up there. And yeah, when Venus moves, so there's my point is there can be a lot that's going on that can be oppressing there. So making sure to try to not just see all of the negative, and to remember that it is complex, where yes, like I did just more kind of focus on negative, but there are positive things too. I just had friends just tell me that they're looking at a wedding venue. I got friends whose kids are turning one. I just had someone who had a friend just had a baby just a few days ago. So it's like there's all sorts of good things that are happening too. I'm enjoying. I got some great stuff from my courses. Schooling's been great. So like there are really great things too, and I think it's like making space for both of those things and dealing with those stuff as it comes up. And of course, everyone's life is different. That's another thing I think to remember too, that we're all experiencing this thing differently, even if it seems collectively like it's a mess. I think it's more, again, it's always more nuanced than that, but I can go on that all day, but I think I'm going to end that there. So and that's the week that we're going through. So be curious to see how this is showing up for you. Just kind of I'm actually getting pretty ahead of my videos, but when I'm just looking at how things are configured in my chart, I like what Big Papa's doing. I can't wait till Jupiter moves into Leo. I'm actually kind of looking forward to that, and getting some of that pressure off of Saturn from Saturn. We got another month of that. Saturn's been doing some decent stuff in my chart. I got that square to my sun placement, which is like meh, but some good stuff is coming from that. There's been some changes, some personal changes, some health changes that I've been making as of late that's been really good. And just a lot of spiritual things that have been kind of happening too, some deeper connections there. That's been really nice. So I've been enjoying that change. Mars, Mars can stay. Mars is going through one of my is in my 10th house right now. And so once it enters into Taurus, or well when it enters into Taurus, so that's when I'm kind of keeping an eye on. But that'll probably be like the hardest thing that'll cone up that period of time. But even just like thinking about time has been something that I've been just personally been kind of thinking about more. I've just been in a very, very ruminative place. I don't think that's a word, but I've been ruminating a lot. Just trying to sharpen my vocabulary up some and all that good things. But I'd love to hear what's been going on with you, how you've been navigating the spaces, how you've been working with these charts. And again, if that's something where if you want assistance navigating how this is showing up in your personal chart, to know what time lords to look for, all these things, again, down that in the description box, there's a link for all of those to book a consultation with me. I have a couple of links for some playlists for the Lunar Shenanigans and for the Celestial News Monthly, which, like I said, I'll be releasing the video for June. Let's see when this is coming out. If I haven't already put it out, it'll be coming out sometime this week. I imagine that I'll have that out, so that's something to look forward to. And then if you're a patron on Patreon, I'll have the monthly ones for the auspicious dates for June that'll be coming out there as well. So that's something to look out for. Yeah, there's that, and then I have different playlists for different planets in different domiciles of different of the other planets in different places, like the first place, second place, fifth place, all that good stuff. So that's all available for you. But don't look at that. I'm gonna get it under 40 minutes. So we're making progress. But yeah, that's all I have to say have for you this week. So until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep eyes on that good old moon. I saw the moon at like 9 a.m. That was a random one. So the moon's out and about. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.